How's it going, guys? Welcome back to a GBA video. This one is the first of its kind for the channel. My name is Chris. I am joined by Adam, T and ATV of the D-League, but we're not going to be talking about D-League stuff. Adam, go ahead and introduce yourself and tell people what we are going to be talking about today.
Well, hello. We're going to be talking about a trade that happened in the GBA between the Los Angeles Nidokings and the Milwaukee Sawsbucks. The Sawsbucks traded their Cobalion for the LA Nidokings Gyarados. This is actually pretty important because there was actually a contract swap between that. So the Sawsbucks only had Cobalion for, what, one more year? Is that right? Yeah?
No, the Sawsbucks had Cobalion for 2 years. They're trading him to the Nidokings, who now only have him for 1 year. The Nidokings, who had Gyarados on its last year, are now giving it to the Sawsbucks for 2 years. So,
which is pretty important because Gyarados is a pretty good Pokemon.
yeah, it's a thing that probably goes fairly high in most drafts. It's got a lot of utility and versatility. And speaking of that, going straight into it, let's go with how do you feel about this trade? As far as, do you think it was an equitable trade? Do you think somebody was a winner? Somebody got out? In my opinion, I think the Sawsbucks got the better end of this deal.
I'd have to agree with you there because just looking at the Pokemon themselves, Gyarados has been just a monster since Gen 1, and Cobalion has kind of been almost semi-irrelevant since its introduction.
Yeah, it's on the lower end of the Musketeer spectrum.
Yeah.
Vastly overshadowed by Terrakion and Keldeo. And
that's not to say that in the GBA format that always would work out, because obviously we all know that it really works out a lot differently than in the GBA as opposed to standard format. But if we look at their stats for at least for past year, this past year, they're actually pretty close.
Yeah, fairly comparable. Neither of them putting up huge numbers. Both of them ending with negative differentials. Cobalion with a -4 at 5 kills and 9 deaths. And Gyarados at a -3 with 2 kills and 5 deaths. So
both of them looking like they die a lot. But, they're on different teams then. They might have some good synergy with what they got traded to.
And the stats also are not tailored to defensive roles. They really only tell the story of successful offensive things.
True.
Which traditionally, when you think of at least Gyarados, you do consider an offensive threat. Cobalion's got a lot of good offensive momentum and does hit pretty freaking hard. But I think it was just a case of both of these things were kind of used for more support, momentum, and defensive roles. I know Gyarados specifically was used as bulky Gyarados for most of the season in Season 2 for the Nidokings.
Yeah, well, I'm looking. I have their stats up, and I wrote a little plus minus down for both of these Pokemon because I'm a huge nerd. But when you look at Cobalion, his offense, he really, if I want to be pessimistic, I say he has middling attacking stats with base 90s on both. But if I want to be supportive in the GBA role, I would say that he has balanced attacking stats, which could make him kind of dangerous coming from both the physical and the special side. I mean, 90's not really a huge hitting thing, but if you prepare one way and then he surprises you with a different way, he could be decently dangerous to at least get a surprise kill.
Yeah, it's the reason, the Volt Switch variant, the mixed Volt Switch variant's feasible, is because
right.
Volt Switch, not only is it just that, there to help build momentum, but it still hits hard. It arguably can hit harder than some things.
That's true. And then I look over at Gyarados, who, he has the two great abilities. Obviously, Intimidate, generally used more than Moxie. He's got respectable bulk all around, especially with the Intimidate, and then he has just the 125 attack. Pair that with the Dragon Dance, and whoever you can have support on your team. He can sweep through teams if you're not prepared for him. So I was looking. One of the minus that I have for Gyarados is that although he has some generally pretty good coverage moves, he has Edge Quake and Ice Fang, and now he has the new toy and Crunch, although it doesn't really help him.
It's not going to help standard Gyarados as much.
Unless you're going against a team that just has a crazy dark weakness. I don't really know. But he really has that 4 move slot syndrome where he almost has to have Dragon Dance if he's going to be a real offensive threat, because he only has that base 81 speed, which really is not very quick.
It's definitely been outclassed as far as speed creep has gone over the generations.
Right. And then if you want to maybe run sub on him so that he can stay away from Willows or T-Waves or whatever, then you're left with 2 moves to try and cover everything that you can do. And so I think that'd be the only real, I guess, cutback on Gyarados that I have. Whereas with Cobalion, I kind of have its typing for me isn't fantastic because it's weak to Earthquake, weak to fighting moves,
weak to fire.
I mean, it's especially since it has that base 129 defense. You'd think you'd be able to bring it in and maybe kind of manage that, but with such common weaknesses to those types, I don't know. I don't overly like Cobalion myself, but
I mean, it's got its utilities though, and you can't deny that it can hit hard.
That's true.
Justified is really nice in the generation with the super rampant knockoff. That's
especially with the resistance to the dark also, so you get the boost and you take probably 0 damage.
Yeah, and I think we covered the specifics of the individual Pokemon. One thing we should talk about is how this is going to work with the teams and things like that. While we're slagging on Cobalion a little bit, I do think this is a fairly good grab for the Nidokings. They lost Scrafty to free agency. His contract was up. That was their only fighting type, and arguably not the best fighting type in the league, given that quad fairy weakness and, again, the rampancy of fairy coverage on a lot of teams. Scrafty just can't hang around between that and all of the fighting moves flying around. So Danza did absolutely, in my opinion, need to pick up some kind of fighting type. And with the shallow pool that they have going for them, I don't know that there was much better he could have gotten. So I think maybe going for a trade and grabbing someone else's early on was good.
I would definitely agree with you there. I mean, you got to think that in the GBA format, you can't have all your teams running around with a Conkeldurr. Only one team gets that. So the limited choices of fighting Pokemon is a severe limitation going on. And Cobalion is definitely of the middle to higher on the fighting types. Obviously not the best, but I mean he still is respectable. And for me, when I looked at Danza's team, he has still on contract. He has 2 very strong special attackers with Raikou and Gengar, which Gengar gives an immunity to, immunity to both of those types that he's weak to, of the fighting and ground.
Yep.
And he has 2 really strong physical attackers with Weevil and Haxorus. So having this kind of almost, if you use him offensively, kind of a wild card who can Calm Mind and be special, or he can Swords Dance and be physical, or he can
run support rocks in case you want to have a more offensive Gliscor or something that week or anything like that.
And then he also has access to Workup if you wanted to run him some crazy mix set if you wanted to be real frisky. But so in that respect, I definitely see him fitting in pretty well. And as I was kind of alluding to a little bit earlier, Danza has some Pokemon on his team that really support the kind of weaknesses that Cobalion has, where he has the Gengar, he has the Gliscor. I mean, both of those give 0 craps about a fighting type move or obviously a ground type move. So I mean, when I do give the kind of knocks on Cobalion, I think it fits well into Danza's team with what he still has on contract. So that's definitely a plus for him.
Yep.
I was going to say one minor drawback that I saw is that with his current lineup that he has, his one lone real special wall that he has, if he wants to obviously run a more standard team, is Empoleon.
Yeah.
Which, if he wants to run a physically defensive Cobalion, you now have 2 Steel type as your walls, which can get tricky from time to time.
Yeah.
But that's my only knock. I mean, I think it works well for what he's got.
Yeah, and I think there's enough special things left in the pool for him to be able to shore that up, and I think it's a much easier get in the draft. Danza doesn't have the strongest placement in the upcoming draft as far as picks. He's not going to be able to get a lot of super early good things. He is like, I believe he's the fifth pick in the first round, which is decent enough. And definitely he can use that to shore up his weaknesses and things like that. So I think it was a smart move on his part, just because I do think he'll be able to cover that part of his weaknesses a lot easier than he would trying to find a good fighting type to fit in on the team.
I agree.
Unless he wanted to lock down Hariyama for 3 years or something like that, but
That's true.
you know,
The hype pick.
yeah,
I mean, I give on his side, I would rate it as a B. I mean, it's solid. I still don't overly care for Cobalion itself, but I think with his team format, he definitely could have done worse. So I'd give it a B.
yeah, I think that's fair. Um, Going on to Steve Magnitude, the Milwaukee Sawsbucks, grabbing up that big Gyarados 2 years. I really like it. Um, I'm not sure about the synergy aspect of it. Uh, he lost his true bulky water in the form of Jellicent to free agency this year, but Jellicent was very limited and it didn't see much playtime at all in season two. Gyarados, while not the traditional bulky water, when you start naming them off the top of your head, it's it is a bulky water, and it's arguably the most diverse water type in the game, short of Greninja, who doesn't really count when you're factoring in Protean.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, Gyarados just it's got typing and decent enough bulk that you could run a physically defensive set. It's got, I think, significant and real special bulk if you want to run bulky on that side. And with Intimidate, obviously that just makes it better with more survivability. Obviously, it's not the fastest thing in the world, but it can hit like a truck, and it's got Dragon Dance, which is one of the best setup moves, especially when you are specifically dealing with something that is on the slower end of the speed. While you did bring up good points, that it's not the best as far as coverage and you're losing slots the more setup options you have. Sub DD is terrifying, and it's a thing you have to plan for.
That's very true.
And just, I like this because it brings versatility. Steve's got a really versatile team at this point. Landorus T we saw used almost exclusively defensively last season, but obviously anyone who's familiar with the standard Smogon metagame knows that it's a terrifying offensive threat as well. Victini, the, classic base 100 pixie, it can do whatever it wants. It can be bulky any way you want it to be. It can be offensive any way you want it to be. It's got a great move pool, and, it's a threat. Greninja is obviously the definition of versatility with stab everything.
I mean, yeah, it's so when I first looked at it, I was like you. I was like, I don't really know how well synergy wise goes because, as you said, that you don't really tend to think of Gyarados as your bulky water because his other water is Greninja, which we're not even really going to put a type on Greninja because he can be whatever he wants. But I looked into it. The more I looked at it, the more I was like, I really do actually like this trade. He now has a dual Intimidate core with Landorus and Gyarados.
Mm-hmm. He's got Grass, Fire, Water with Victini, Virizion, Gyarados.
He completes that, and the more I looked at that, the more I like that because although they all have their own respective bulk, they're all offensive mons who they can come in and they actually, with their other secondary typing, they actually cover a lot of good weaknesses for each other. Mm-hmm. The rock types that are going to try and get Gyarados or Victini is resisted by Cobalion, or not.
Yep, the dark types.
Cobalion, Virizion.
Baits out, handles that.
Yeah, there's a lot of actual interesting with that secondary types of all three of those grass, water, fire. They actually do cover themselves really well, and then they can put offensive pressure because of who they are. And then the last thing that I saw and I got pretty excited for hopefully Steve to use is the fact that he does have Klefki on his team. which could potentially set up prankster screens for an already bulky Gyarados to be able to get a sub DD that you were talking about that's super dangerous, or potentially T-Wave support so that he doesn't even have to DD anymore. So I think he, like you said, he does have a very, very versatile team that it's going to be hard to prepare for what he has now, let alone what he's able to get in the upcoming draft.
Yeah, and I feel like Cobalion was a little bit redundant on his team with Virizion there, and also with Klefki, shared a lot of weaknesses and things like that across the board. While Cobalion did have its uses, I think Gyarados adds significantly more to his team, and it's a great grab in the last year before it goes to free agency. Because, like I said, you want to plan to do well, and if you plan to do well, then you have to plan on having a low draft spot the next season. And
Right.
Steve wants to win it. The Sawsbucks want to go big. If he goes big this year, there was not going to be a chance he was going to be able to pick Gyarados up at the end of
Oh yeah.
at the following draft. So I think grabbing it now, getting it for that extra little year, it's good foresight and good team building structure. I think it covers a lot of holes that he had, and it's going to free up his options for the draft. Steve arguably is in a worse draft position than Danza.
Hmm.
He's got one round he doesn't even have a pick, so he has to get a compensation pick. He's the very last compensation pick, so he's the last pick of the regular draft in general. And again, it's a shallow move pool. A lot of good things already. It's a shallow, not move pool, but it's a shallow pool to draft from. So it's going to be interesting. I think, making the smart trade now, it's really going to let him dig deep into the draft pool and just get accent Pokemon instead
Yeah,
of necessities.
definitely. I would say one thing that I want to see from Steve, which I think is completely underrated in so far in the GBA history, and I think might potentially become more of a thing with Oris and the reintroduction of the more berries that we have, is Gyarados actually does get natural gift, which I think could be really a surprise thing, especially with having something like a grass berry for a Rotom Wash or maybe a Quagsire or something like that that wants to come in and wallet.
Yeah, again, the only problem with that is what you mentioned earlier, just
Right.
lack of coverage options. Like,
Right.
and with natural gift, that's a one-time thing.
Yep.
You've, which in this format, a lot of one-time things work. As long as you get it off on the right predicted,
Correct.
switch in or stay in and knock out the thing you needed it for, it can be worth it. You
It's
know,
true.
in this format, one for one can be a lot more valuable than in standard play. So.
So how would you, I guess, put a grade to the side of
I
Steve?
think I think this is an A plus. I think the only way this could have been a better deal would have been if he had done it last season and gotten Gyarados for longer. um, I think grabbing it now at the beginning of the season before the draft, so he can build things to accent upon it, and also so that he has it for the full season is fantastic. I think the typing of the Pokemon is great. Like I said, it's got sneaky synergy. It's got more synergy than you think at first glance.
Right.
Which again, at first glance, you're still like, oh, he fucking got the Gyarados. That's great because
Yeah.
Gyarados is great. But I think it's great. I think it's an A plus pick.
I definitely don't disagree with you. I guess I would give it an A just because I'm really hesitant to give things A pluses, but it's one of those things that we kind of mentioned a little bit before that it's not a true bulky water, and with having him and Greninja, I don't think he's going to be selecting an actual bulky water, which again might not bite him in the butt. That could be perfectly
I
fine.
mean, if he wants to go bulk, he can just forego the water and bring Crest that week. He's got.
That's true. That's true. I forgot that he had Crest because that thing is just a monster.
Yeah, and like I said, Gyarados does have respectable bulk. It obviously didn't work for Danza to run bulky Gyarados as frequently as he did, but sparingly, it can put in some work.
That's true. I mean, and like you said, if he gets any accent Pokemon, obviously he has the Landorus that's immune to the electric because Gyarados is 4 times weak to it. But if you could get potentially a Volt Absorb or a Lightning Rod Pokemon that could take advantage of someone trying to exploit that weakness, he could be in an even more potent situation.
Yeah, if he ends up with a good spot in the Mega Draft, we could see like a Mega Sceptile or something like that.
That is true.
That'd be fantastic synergy. He'd basically be free from worry about people bringing electric types to his team. But
That
yeah,
I mean, like we kind of said, and like the grade kind of showed. I think Magnitude might have came out a little bit better on the end of this, but I don't feel like he got a steal there. Like, I think that Danza did get something that worked very well with his team.
I think Danza got something he needed, which is important. It really is. I can't emphasize enough, like with the draft placement and things like that, how hard it is to get the things you need, especially in this draft. And it would necessarily be things that he would have to get something for 3 years, and this might not be the year that there's a 3 year he wants. However, if he puts it off a year, then there's a lot of more stuff that goes back into the pool that's there for him to pick from.
That's true.
And he can offset or, use as a trade. He can draft something now in the 3 year and then work and trade someone later next year and maybe make up some of that contract, value and get a longer pull for something, potentially. So.
Oh, it's all potential. It's all hypothetical.
Yeah, it absolutely is. But I think that about covers it. I think we have spoken on it to a degree. Let us know in the comments what you guys think, how you think this affects the teams, their rankings, their value, what you think this is going to mean for their drafts, what their team should be looking for, who you think won out, if you enjoyed the video, that kind of stuff. We will also have links to Magnitude, the Milwaukee Sawsbucks, and Danza Crobat for the Wins channels in the description. If for some reason you have not checked them out and subscribed to them, please go ahead and do that. And stay tuned. It looks like we're going to have a potentially busy off-season trade as we build up to the draft. So expect some more videos like this along the way.
Lots of talk. Lots of talk going on.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Adam, for joining me. I'll also put Adam's channel in the description. You can check out his one video he has.
It's a really good one video, though.
It is. It's a great video, and maybe one day he'll get more videos up.
Who knows?
It's a thing. It could happen.
But all right. Thanks, everybody.
Yep. See you later.